Hey, I'm Brandon. I'm going to talk today about how to come up with a brilliant idea. A lot of times we have all these ideas, they come to mind, but are they ever really a great idea for an app? Like, how many times have you come up with an idea for an app? You think, man, this is going to be a billion-dollar idea. If only I had the money to execute it, or the time, or the knowledge, or whatever, it's going to, change the world, right? So, that's kind of what I'm a little bit going to discuss here. Maybe you have an idea already. Maybe you just need help thinking an idea through. You might want to kind of improve your thought process around the idea. So this video is going to talk about the next steps. Now, when you go about trying to discover an idea, maybe if you don't have one already, you might not know kind of the process for that. So just kind of start there and talk real quick about what it is you need to, some ways that you can approach coming up with a good idea in case you don't have one. You might want to define that problem with a subject matter expert, define a problem with a subject matter expert, talk to somebody that is an expert in a particular field and ask them for some challenges that they're experiencing or something like that. Or maybe you're an actual expert at a particular subject already, and so from there you're going to already kind of be aware of something, right? But you also can define a good idea by reading reviews of other existing products or services that handle that niche, right? So if there's a particular subject, it's a particular niche you're going to be trying to come up with this idea in, then going to looking at the apps that already kind of serve that niche and looking for problems in those apps that people have expressed is another way to do it. I also like to do things like go out to Capterra. That's a great little website that's got kind of organized a list of all of the different software solutions that serve any given niche. And so when we go and we look there, we can actually map out specific features that basically we could use to implement in our brilliant idea. Now, there's another approach too, and that is literally going to ChatGPT and asking it tell us about a problem. So if I ask ChatGPT to tell me about a problem that relates to the equestrian industry that could be solved by software, then what it's going to do is it's going to tell me about a problem that you could use software to solve. And it's going to be very specific. I can give you the rundown of that, but overall, that's those are just some ways that we can approach finding an idea. Now, once we have kind of conceptualized this thing, we need to do a few more things. We have to define it, validate it, and plan it. Then we can start building it. And that's going to require us to create some prototypes maybe that don't work and prototypes that do work, right? There's diagrams we have to make and little models, and there's the alpha process, the beta process, getting it through to the MVP or the minimum viable product. The whole entire list of things it takes to go through this is quite extensive. So when we have an idea, we think to ourselves, oh, this isn't going to be that big of a deal to try out. But in fact, it normally is a pretty substantial undertaking. Now, let's say we're using Capterra, G2, SourceForge. We're going to zero in on a niche market. And then we're going to visit all of the solutions that are in that niche. We're going to learn about those and discover them. And from there, we're going to look at all of the reviews of the competitors in there. We're going to say, okay, what are some good things and what are some bad things people are saying about this? We're going to need to identify our features, and then we can do product demos. So in many cases, we can go to these existing solutions and demo these products out and say, this product, I want to try it out and see and sell it to me. And so the other guy is going to basically give you a lot of the info if you just go in and say, hey, yeah, I might be interested in purchasing or using this product. In many cases, if you're trying to come up with an idea, you might actually discover that, hey, this product's already out here, it works great, it's really nice, I should just go ahead and implement this for whatever problem I'm trying to solve anyway. So it can be beneficial to everybody to go ahead and try to make sure that your idea just, isn't already done and done too well, so that, you just need to use what the other guy's already got. And at the end of the day, we're going to need to kind of extract all the features from all of these different things we look at and kind of compare and determine that. And from there, we can start creating our sort of a specification around that. So, the first question you got to ask yourself is your idea actually brilliant? And I would say that don't take your own word for the brilliance of your idea. Now, that may sound counterintuitive, but in fact, if you may say, well, I believe in myself, I believe in my idea, I have confidence and faith in this, then, you need to get some other points of views, right? Because you're always going to have a bias toward yourself. It's very difficult to take a completely unbiased perspective on things that you come up with, because then you kind of you feel invested in that idea as soon as you come up with it. So this is where the subject matter experts or SMEs really come into play. And so you really need to find some SMEs or an SME at least in your niche that you can talk to and say, hey, tell me what you think about this. So you might need an NDA, you might not. A lot of times when people approach me and want to talk about an idea with me, if they ask me to sign an NDA, I'm usually like, nah, not interested in signing an NDA because you're really not going to be paying me anything. And I don't want to maintain a filing cabinet of NDAs I've signed with people who have never given me anything except for taking my time to tell me about their idea. And then if I'm ever involved in anything related to that, a lot of times people approach me with similar ideas constantly and frequently that, NDAs can be a little bit premature if you're just kind of exploring the viability of an idea versus if you have invested in market research and a business plan and have some kind of prototype with actual user experiences or something on it. That may be a little different. So don't be in too big a rush to throw NDAs in front of everybody if you're just talking about concepts. But once those things become invested in, once those things are kind of clarified a little bit more, then NDAs become necessary for the people that are involved in the ongoing work. Now, you're going to want to discuss your idea with multiple SMEs. I've been told that you should ask 50 subject matter experts. An interesting case that I'm aware of is a medical AI app that was supposed to be, predictive of things like cancer cells that a research group wanted to create. And when they started asking the experts about it, they actually found out that there was a lot of difficulty in how that idea was going to be implemented in the labs due to the controls in the lab equipment manufacturers that are out there in the wild. And so integrating what they wanted to do with what people use to already do this became too cumbersome and too complex. And so that idea, as valid and amazing as it was, ended up not making sense just because there was a blocker deeper in that was really going to make it difficult to pull off. So that, I think, notable. Now, another thing you can do at this phase, when you're talking to people, especially when you're talking to people that could be your prospective customer, is you can ask them for an LOI or a letter of intent. And so a lot of people, when they're putting together ideas in early stages, they get these LOIs from people because what that does is it actually gives you some leverage later you can use when you go to raise money, or just to kind of solidify that, hey, people have said that they intend to buy that. That doesn't mean that they actually will. It doesn't guarantee that they will, but it definitely says that they expressed a pretty solid interest in that. So at that point there, you may be wanting to do something like make an advisory board. This is very popular and create a group of subject matter experts and professionals that are going to be related to this thing and tied into it in some kind of capacity where they're going to be performing an advisory function for you. There is some stuff you can do with stock option incentives later. I like Carta.com. It's a great system, a great platform for issuing stock, especially in, early phase startups and things. But there's a point when you do it, and it's not necessarily when you're just exploring viability. Okay? So to determine the viability, you're going to need to clearly define the problem and opportunity that you're addressing. You're going to need to do market research and gather info about who the customers are, the industry trends, learn about the competitors. A lot of this stuff you've already done, and the research stuff I already talked about. Studying the competitors' products and services, learning their weaknesses and strengths. This is all stuff you would have already gotten done. Determining, what is going to be unique about what you're going to offer is important as well, because you have to have a unique value proposition, maybe even an unfair competitive advantage. So in the process of doing viability studies, you also are going to look up things like potential costs to do this thing, revenue that it may generate, other expenses related to executing it, risks, regulatory stuff, legal stuff. All that has to be thought out, and building that into like a formal document is a really good idea in an early stage on this. So I just want to say that in my experience and in the experience of a lot of people that have gone down this road, ideas tend to be viable only about 20% of the time. So that means that around 80% of the ideas that you're going to come up with or other people are going to come up with aren't even going to be viable. So when somebody comes to me and says, I have an idea, I think it's really great and it's going to be $1 billion industry or something, in many cases I'm like, well, you kind of have there's about a 1 in 5 chance maybe that's actually true. And so you got to find out. I'm very skeptical at first about this stuff. So we got to make sure we slow our roll. We don't want to rush into something. We need to do our homework really well, get that viability assessment done, and then if we're confident in this to the point where we're willing to invest our own money into it, that's when we're going to make our first and formal investment into our idea. And we're going to hire a professional to do a viability study, a real viability study. Unless you really feel like you're very good at doing viability studies and have a lot of experience at that, I would say having a professional handle that for you is just going to take a lot of burden off of you, and it's going to give you something that's actually really useful later. And so when you get that, then you take that and discuss it with your advisory board, kind of go through it, figure out, hey, what is the next step, right? And if it's viable, then great. And if it's not viable, then you've only spent a very small amount of money on a study to figure out if you need to spend more money, okay? So this is all about, it's not about, I have an idea, build it, how much? This is more about, I want to make sure I have a good idea, and I'm gonna invest in that to see if I want to spend more money on continuing exploring this, okay? Now, if you don't find any competition for your idea, you may say, this market's wide open. Guess what? It might not exist, okay? So if there's no market for it, then there's not going to be any competition. If your idea is viable tomorrow, but not today, that may mean that in 10 years or 15 years, everybody's going to be doing that or needing it, but today, nobody's going to use it or need it. So you could build it, and then it's going to just rot until the future when it could be used, and it's going to be so far behind the curve at that point because it was developed too early. So building something today for tomorrow is very risky and not necessarily recommended. So I'd be passionate about your idea, but I'd also guard my emotions towards it at this stage and kind of say, we'll see, okay? So this is kind of the slow your roll, right? So the next thing we're gonna talk about is planning this thing out. That's gonna be in my next video, but I hope this video has helped you to really get a good understanding of how to come up with that idea, conceptualize it, be ready to be in a position to start the planning next.